is. Perch, here's a simple little question, but a good one. Tastes change over time, right? What was popular, but and there's some really fascinating charts. I'm always fascinated by these, where you get these kind of displays of, what was popular in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, kind of how tastes change over time. I think is pretty cool. This mail kind of addresses that a little bit. It says, Dear Perch, I saw something that said in the 90s, Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Punisher were so popular that they were considered the trinity for Marvel. From your experience as a retailer, is this true? And who would you say is the trinity now? And it says, and sorry for giving you too many questions. Why is Ghost Rider not more popular nowadays? It's a flaming skull, the #1 tattoo ever. Okay. Well, first off, yes, during the 90s, I would say, certainly maybe 91 through 95, the Ghost Rider, Wolverine, and Punisher just printed money for me and for a lot of stores. You put Wolverine into things, he was super popular. Punisher, again, you had Wolverine and the Punisher in one comic. I mean, it's going to sell like crazy. And Ghost Rider, when they did the Danny Ketch version, and they updated the bike, and they gave him more kind of a more modern look, which, by the way, just for reference, to kind of show you how some things never change. I remember there were some people who were pissed off at Danny Ketch becoming the Ghost Rider, and it's like, what's wrong with Johnny Blaze? Why are you replacing him? And then there's even, if you were on, I want to say AOL, but it was like the old message boards that used to have. I remember there were some people speculating that the reason to do Danny Ketch was to, it was because of the Italian American lobby. And I remember. I'm not joking, by the way. And I remember this kind of debate going on, and somebody's like, "Is Danny Ketch Italian?" I don't think that's a thing. But anyway, these things, they're always with us. But those characters, absolutely, they were absolutely dominant. And even then, when they introduced Deadpool, when they introduced some of these other characters, they were popular. But Deadpool wasn't popular out the gate, like people might think of him today, or when Deadpool hit a real big peak of popularity about 10 years ago. But those three characters were the sales trinity of the company. And then there were other little things about that time period. I mean, the Avengers were kind of in a bad shape. I mean, the Hulk was not doing too terrible. The X books, just general kind of X-Force, X-Men, those books were doing okay. There's a lot of different kind of titles and material that was doing all right, but that was the thing, and that was part of why, at least I suspect, that Superman and his black suit, there's a little bit of that. Let's make it look more like the Punisher, and they said so at the time, that they wanted to tap into kind of the Punisher, Ghost Rider. And so imagine that for a moment, that this during the death of Superman and all this stuff, that black suit that Superman was wearing with just a silver logo and all the rest, yeah, there was some inspiration from the Punisher. No joke, in putting that together. And that was DC trying to kind of capture some of that Trinity magic. So that's definitely a thing. Today, who's the Trinity today? Much harder. That's a much harder one. The challenge is, I think that it feels to me like the big companies pushed so hard to kind of deprioritize, in many cases, the characters in favor of the writer, and then to a much lesser extent, the artist. And so in a lot of ways, a writer or a character that's very, very popular, all it takes is a bad, 12-issue run, and that blows up. The character, and who are we kidding with a 12-issue run, 4-issue run, 5-issue run? That popularity can evaporate very, very quickly. There's very few characters that are Teflon for the company. SpiderMan is probably as close as you get. SpiderMan sales tends to just kind of hang out there, do well. Iron Man, despite, and the other Avengers characters, yes, they are more popular, but they don't have that same kind of massive draw. And again, in many cases, if you look at the actual comics being produced, you've got Iron Man doing a kind of very introspective, gets God powers, is hanging out with Hellcat. I mean, that doesn't, none of that screams Trinity must-buy blockbuster kind of character. It doesn't. Wolverine still does okay, but Wolverine has also suffered from just very convoluted stories and, in many cases, a reliance too much on the same villains over and over again. I am surprised that they're doing so much with Omega Red. It just it is one of the villains in his gallery, but there's like you go around the cycle of Sabretooth, Omega Red, Sabretooth, America Red, some vague, guys in suits from Department H doing something. I mean, there's not as huge a assortment of villains, or they don't use the huge assortment of villains in a good way, I guess you should say. But I think Spider-Man probably for Marvel is the single man trinity. Now I think Marvel would like there to be other characters up there. They went through that phase where Captain Marvel, they said Captain Marvel is one of the Trinity for sure. Miles Morales is another one where they've said this is one of our most popular characters. The sales don't reflect that, and they're not must buys. But a lot of people do come in, they've got Spider-Man. I think all that's happened with the X-Men, I think, has kind of shaken that book a little bit, and it's made it less of a must buy. It's hard to tell where to jump on, and even this new storyline, you got Cyclops is dressed up as somebody else, and he's having to hide the fact that he died at one point, and they have really big threats that have been established in X-Men, but they're not. The threats just kind of hang out in the shadows for 3 years, and they don't really make many moves. So there's that. But I mean, that's probably a Deadpool was up there, and I think Deadpool has fallen quite a bit. I think you saw the Hulk during the Immortal Hulk run get up there. I think Venom in the most recent run with Cates was pretty close. They're trying to do the same things with with Thor right now. But probably if you're talking about the last 5 years, if I had to put a gun to my head, who are the big characters for Marvel? I think you're probably at Spider-Man, maybe Deadpool and Venom. It's probably what you're going with. Yeah, probably that. On DC side, Batman, and then Batman in Europe, and then maybe like some kind of medieval Batman. It's probably the Trinity there. Maybe I don't know. That's really what you got. And once again, at DC, they would like Wonder Woman to be. They'd like the Trinity there to be Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. The challenge is, Batman it somehow gets the magic, he gets the rub, so it works for him. Wonder Woman as a character, I have this theory that when the publishers tell you incessantly that this character is a big deal and this character is popular, they drive away customers with that message. And I think Marvel did that with Captain Marvel, and I think DC did that to some extent with Wonder Woman. Not as bad, but they didn't harness the marketing right. They really want to say, Wonder Woman is one of the biggest characters in all of history, and she's got a movie, and she's at the this is a spotlight on Wonder Woman. And even the like death metal series that Scott Snyder put out, he's like, Wonder Woman is the star of this story. And I mean, sort of, she was a main character in it, but I think if you casually look at death metal, you would say that's a Batman event. Why is it a Batman event? Well, because the villain is, Batman Joker, and Batman and a bunch of other Batman from the multiverse are running around. It was kind of Wonder Woman and a bunch of Batman fight, multiverse shenanigans. That was kind of the story. That was the hook. And I just don't think, the problem is really the companies are reliant on two characters primarily today. Batman and Spider-Man. That's the core of where the big two are at right now, and they do need to build up that other stuff, but they're not doing it. As to the last question, why isn't the Ghost Rider more popular these days? It's Flame Skull. Yeah, Ghost Rider should be an easy one to just crank out and do comics, and I don't think this is the answer to everything, but I think if you go back and you look at the 90s Ghost Rider and you look at the storytelling was relatively simplistic. What I mean by that is, there were some villains. They were kind of demonic vampire, villains. They were trying to kill people. Danny Ketch would stumble onto the scene. He would turn to the Ghost Rider. There'd be a big fight with fire and chains, and then the issue would end, and we'd get another one. And that worked. That worked. I think that again, Marvel gets too introspective with this stuff, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do Ghost Rider title, but we can't do the same stuff we've done before. It's like if I'm the editor in chief right there, I'm like, whoa, stop. So, wait a minute. Did the stuff we did before, was it popular? Did it do well? Well, yeah. So, all right, then do the stuff we did before. stop, stop trying to don't invent something new and weird. That's not entirely fair. You can't just stagnate and do the same things. But I think people get into these stories and they go, all right, well, we've got Ghost Rider here, and we want to really explore his dynamic with Hell, and we want to the fact that he's got this curse, and what about his family? How do they feel about it? And what about is he trying to get rid of it? Maybe just secretly he like it a little bit. Let's spend a lot of pages telling the reader that, or you just put out the comic, have the guy with the flaming skull and the motorcycle and the chains in some action with some big threats, and then you have those things going along in parallel, where the character is questioning what's happening while you're kind of leaning into the metal flaming skull aspect of this entire thing, which is why people are buying the comic in the first place. And you did get a lot of character development in that 90s Ghost Rider. It was just the character development was backup to leaning into big action flaming skull. Pretty easy. Know your audience, delivered. It's like if you're going to open up a McDonald's, don't try and start a yoga class in there. Yes, some people might come into McDonald's by accident and be excited that you're featuring yoga, but that's not your core audience. Read the room, sell burgers. Anyway, thanks for listening.